Well, good morning. I'm just going to give this session a couple of seconds to allow all of our attendees to join. I can see that we've got people coming on stream right now, so I just need a second or two to make sure we get everybody in. Okay, so I can see people joining, so I think if everybody else, my colleagues, are okay, let's make a start. Okay, welcome to this morning's webinar from Awesome Tech Training. Today talking about why choose WordPress. Before we get into the core of the presentation, I've just got a few sort of housekeeping points. You'll notice as you join that your microphones are all muted. So whilst you can hear us and hopefully you can see us as well, we can't hear you today. And we are recording the session. I'll just check. We are definitely recording the session, yes. So that we can get a link to you after the session is finished, so you can watch that back at your leisure. There'll also be an opportunity to download the slides and the content that we're using today, so you can receive any links and codes and things like that that are in the slides that we're presenting. So whilst you're muted, we can't hear you to ask questions. We do please invite questions as we go through. You'll see that there's a Q&A function on the Zoom control panel. Please submit your questions there. We will try and answer some of those in the background as we go along, but there's also time at the end to ask those questions live. So some we'll ask live, some we'll deal with in the background if we can. So a few introductions. My name's Rachel Clinton. I'm on the business development team here at Awesome Tech Training. I've got two colleagues on the line with me today. I've got Lorna Walker, who's also mostly in the background today, helping to field questions and so on. But our core presenter today is Steve Hanlon. So Steve, I think I shall hand over to you.
Lovely. Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Ray. Right, this morning talk why choose WordPress, but the agenda of what we'll go through. First of all, I'll introduce ourselves, Awesome Tech Training, and what we do. And then we'll look at what it is, what a website is, what it is we're trying to do, and what kind of makes up a website, and how really a content management system can help us in putting that site together. WordPress isn't the only CMS, content management system, that's out there, and so we'll have a look quickly at what those alternatives are and things that you might be considering, and also then what makes WordPress itself quite so popular, you know, why so many people choose it. We'll look at some aspects of WordPress, and then we'll have some next steps as well at the end of the presentation. So just about us, about Awesome Tech Training, our main focus is to try and help small businesses or people like yourselves take control of their web presence. That means the tools that you use for being on the web, and the content that you have on the web, and the way that you talk and interact with people. So our core product is our Build a Website in a Day with WordPress course. This is it's ideal if you're sort of like starting out with WordPress, if you're starting out from scratch, and it'll take you from installing WordPress through to actually having a running site. And so it's the course that we used to give face-to-face, and we do it in a day. This is a video self-paced version of that course that you can do in your own time. We also provide advice and support for WordPress as well. So if you've got any questions, you can book time from us and sort of pop in, and we can sort of see what it is that the problem is, and see if there's a way of helping you, or show you how you can resolve it yourself as well, and take you through that process. So you can book us by the hour, or by the day, or however it is best that we can help you. And you'll find on the website as well, we've got our other webinars listed. So we cover a range of social media and WordPress and more general web style things that might help, might be able to help you. And so just bob on and you can book your places there. And because you're here, we do have discounts on those webinars and on the different ways that we can help and on the course. So I'll just sort of go through that at the end of the presentation. So what's a website? Well, this is not necessarily a philosophical question. A website is made up of a number of things. And principally it's the text, the HTML, which gets all the words, and it also has the information for putting up the images as well. So we can see here, we've got our HTML body and a number of images that we might have on. And so years ago, we used to have to sort of write this text, this HTML, and construct these pages ourselves. And they were coded by specialists and web programmers. Anything super complex, you'd need a programmer. Nowadays, we've got tools that can help us with this. So we still need web designers and developers for sort of the more complex stuff. But getting a site up, we can use tools called content management systems. And so what we can see here is the WordPress admin screen. And you start to get a sense of what a content management system can do. It's a tool which lets you manage the text and the media, so all the bits that make up your website, and you can manage all those different parts. So within WordPress, you've got pages and you've got media, the images and PDFs and other assets that you might have, and pages, well, and posts, so sort of like blog posts. But it'll also look after the more general things as well, like the navigation, how people get around your site, what it looks like, and any of the bits of functionality as well that you need. And so whatever sort of CMS you choose, whatever content management you need to do, you need to be looking at whether or not that tool will make it easy for you to be able to manage that. And so WordPress isn't necessarily the only game in town, and there are alternatives. So if you've started to look into content management systems, you'll find that there's quite a lot. I mean, this is just a handful really of the things that are out there, and they're tailored for different things, for different people, and different purposes. So you'll have things like Magento and Shopify, which are sort of e-commerce based content management systems. CMSs like Umbraco are based more on, say, a Windows platform than something that's slightly more generic. And you'll recognize things like Wix and Squarespace because they are commercial subscription-based CMSs, and so you'll find that they will advertise an awful lot more. So I'm sure as you've been browsing the web or whatever, you'll have seen adverts for those. And I'll just mention Drupal as well. So Drupal sort of sits, it's more of a technology-driven CMS. It sits using the same code that, say, something like WordPress uses, or the same language, but it tends to be more used by more technically minded. So there's a range of abilities, a range of areas where it might be, your CMS might be used. And so the trick is to find the one that best suits what you need. However, when we look at all of those CMSs, you can see, so if we look at the most popular ones, you can see the WordPress has a massive proportion of the market share. So if you come across a website and it's being run by a CMS, which is a large number of the websites, basically every other one that you'll hit is a WordPress site. So there's over 27 million live sites running WordPress. And these are from August when I pulled out these numbers. And you can see that obviously, therefore, the next highest CMSs have considerably less market share. So Wix at about 7% and Squarespace at 4%. The useful thing about something like this means that something with 50% of market share, there's going to be a lot of people out there who know how it works and be able to help. And so we'll dig into that a little bit further. But what that does mean is that there are a lot of sites out there. You know, if you choose something like WordPress, it's a relatively safe decision when you compare it with what other people are doing. So why not use one of the other ones though? Well, WordPress is free, so a lot of the other ones cost money. So there are free ones and there are ones that cost money. WordPress is in essence, it's free. The other ones are niche, so you need to understand right at the beginning all of the things that you need to do, or you have to have a good idea, especially if you're going to choose something that's, say, very specific in terms of how it's going to be used. So if you're going to use something like Shopify, then you know that you're going to have to fit in with Shopify's way of working. So you may want e-commerce, but you're going to have to do it in that way. The other thing is that there's fewer people using them. If you've got 27 million sites out there, there's a lot of developers and there's a lot of knowledge that comes with something like WordPress, and less so with other CMSs. You do have point-and-click CMSs, so things like Squarespace and Wix. They're very easy to start using. So obviously they're charging you money for this, and so they want it to be nice and easy for you to use. But the downside to that is that there is considerably less customization that you can do. So it's less flexible. So as your business or project or organization moves forward and develops, the kinds of changes that you might want to do on your website may not necessarily be the things that are supported within the CMS. And another big one, and one of the reasons why as web developers and marketers and salespeople, one of the reasons why we started recommending WordPress is you don't own your site. So with something like Squarespace and Wix, you are very much tied into the way that they work, into the sort of little ecosystem. And to take things out of those sites and then to sort of try and get hold of your site is a lot more difficult. You'll remember the amount of work that people were putting into their MySpace accounts years ago. So especially if you had, say, if you were in the music industry or in any sort of entertainment, very often you needed to have a MySpace to be getting out and reaching people. And then all of a sudden that effectively crashed and burned. It's sort of as soon as Facebook came along. And then, of course, about 2 years ago, they announced that they'd lost all of the images and all the content that had been uploaded. And so you don't want to be sort of tied into somebody else's systems. You can, with something like WordPress, own all of that and make sure that you control it. And so with WordPress, as we say at the bottom, it's an essential asset for your business. Your website is an essential asset, and so WordPress will help you with that. And it's not just small businesses or little organizations that are using it. There's a lot of big organizations that build their own sites on top of WordPress as well. And so there's a lot of knowledge as well in running these sites for big organizations. So yes, you're in good company when you're choosing it. So what is it then that makes WordPress itself so popular? Well, I touched on this before. WordPress, the software, is free. So there's a sort of core system, WordPress.org, and that's you can just download it. So when it first started out in 2003, it sort of came into an area when there was a lot of blogging and a lot of online diary making and posting. And it has sort of developed out through that, but all the way through, there's been this sort of open source ethic, sort of a way of sort of saying this, the thing itself is free. You may do things that cost money on top of it, but the core part of it is free. And that means that it's really easy to try out new ideas, try out your new business ideas or project ideas. You just spin up another site and see how it goes. A lot of people worry about what open source actually means. It's something that we sort of bump into a lot with small businesses. And I think it's because, well, the big companies like Microsoft have done a good job of sort of scaring people about what open source is. Open source really means that the code that's there at the heart of it can be passed around and is freely available. And if you want to extend it or make it do something that you want to that better suits what you need, then you can make those changes. And they have licenses and there are sort of rules and conditions around these things. But at the heart of it, that code is free to develop and to share. And these companies that have been putting sort of like a lot of scare stories out about how secure and how safe it is, are exactly the same companies that are using it themselves for all of their products. And at the heart of things like Google and Amazon and Microsoft products, you'll find that there is open source software right at the heart of those as well. And so WordPress is no different and is open source software, so you can download it and kick it off. But you don't have to go through a sort of download and install. So if you wanted to, you could just get some hosting and download it and pop it in, but it's actually a lot easier these days. Of an awful lot of the hosting companies will give you a one-click install. And what that means is you just basically get your site, or you get your hosting, you register your domain, and then you'll click a button and it'll install WordPress. Or you might sort of say, I've got this domain and I want this site to be a WordPress site. And so it takes you all the way through to sort of like a vanilla site, which we'll take a look at. In fact, let's have a look. When you first pop on, so this is a vanilla site, this is the kind of thing that you'll see. And so you register your domain and they'll get something like this, and we'll be able to start editing it and tailoring it to the way that you want. So you start with that sort of blank canvas, but it's easy to use as well. The platform itself was originally a blogging platform, like I said. And so if you want to set up something that's like a news or a magazine or something where there's regular content being updated, it really does suit something like that. And from an SEO perspective as well, the changing content, things sort of happening on your site is really important. And it's not just for developers, so it's out of the box. It's easy to use. So if I'll show you because it's easier to give you an idea. So this is basically a vanilla site. And along the top here, we've got an admin bar. So I've logged in already. So if we have a look at the dashboard is what we saw earlier. And this is where we manage our pages and media. And this is a clean install, so we don't have anything in our media. In our posts, we've just got our hello world. In our pages, we should just have our sample page that we had. So if we wanted to add a new page, a contact us page, say, and you simply just click on add new. And this is within this sort of default way that WordPress works. So we might have a contact us page and fill out the form below to say hi. You really just start typing and you start filling out the page and you just publish the page. And so as your site develops and as your site builds out, you start filling out the pages and putting the content in. And it's really quite easy to start getting your site and building it out. So it's not intuitive. So if you're used to using something like Microsoft Word or PowerPoint or other things where you drag and click and you pull things together, it's not as intuitive as that. But it's once you've got to it and once you've learned how to use it, it's very easy to use, which is probably more important than sort of intuitive. If it's easy and flexible and you can do more with it, which you can, then that's good. And it's highly customizable. So the way that it looks is managed by things called themes. And that gives us like a template and the way that the site looks. So when we were looking at just them, I'll just go back to it. So this look with the header here and the title in this way and the text within this bit, this is all sort of managed by a theme, but there are lots of themes and we'll take a look at those in a mo. But those themes help us create the site design. There are plugins, and so plugins help us organize the things that the site does, so the functionality of the site. And then there's blocks. So there's these three main parts, and the blocks give us sections of content that we can have on a page or within a post. So with these three parts, we're able to sort of customize the way that our site looks and manage the content that's within it and manage what the site does. And the thing about WordPress as well, there's 27 million sites out there that are using it. That means that there's a load of developers out there as well. And so if there's something that you can't find, something that you can't do, then there's a developer usually who's out there who can help you. So we'll have a look at themes. So themes are the thing that manages the way that your site looks, and they help you choose a design. So within our site here, if we go back into our dashboard, you see under appearance here, so this is a way of managing the way that the site looks, and we can choose our themes. So at the box, we get these three default WordPress themes, and they name these after the years. So we've had a 2017 and a 2019 and a 2020. And they are developing a 2021. But you can add others. And so they have a theme directory, which we can see here. And so all of these are different ways that your site can look, and you can install them in order to fit what it is that you want. So you can have a mooch around here and have a look to see if you can find something that suits your business or suits your project. So you'll find, for example, that say you want to start off a website for, say, your baking company. So if we said baking, you might have a bakery, or you might have recipes. No, bakery, that's probably my internet. So you'll see what you do is you can choose one of these. You can sort of find the one that sort of like suits or looks like a good starting point, and consider these as a starting point, really. So you might think that something with a big cake on looks ideal. You can click on install and install it and activate it, and then your site will take on the look and feel of these templates, of this theme. And And then you've obviously got to fill it out, and there'll be things, and there's different bits with each of the themes. But this is a way of very quickly picking up a look of your site. And you find that, so if we had fitness, for example, you'll find that there are things that suit different types of company, different types of projects, different types of website. Or you can choose something that's sort of more white labeled. So we use something called Astra. And so if you see, so this is more of a blank canvas, really. And it's a way of building out your site in order to be able to start from a clean way. But what the theme then does is it gives you a way of managing how the page looks and the way that you put your blocks together. And so you've got a lot more control over the way that your site is put together. So one of the things as well, and it's worth noting, is that in the course that I mentioned earlier, things like Astra, so this is the theme that we dig into, you can very quickly sort of get something that looks nice, so you're not sort of tied into the way that somebody else has decided your business should look. So with something like Astra, you see, you start with something very plain, and then you can configure, you see here, all the different bits of the theme and be able to use it. And then if you like it, or when you're ready, then you can activate and publish it. So these are our themes, and this is, you see now that our Astra is listed here. And so these manage the way that the site looks. And so, yeah, so you can see we've got lots of different themes here. And just by clicking on activate, so you can change the way that your site and the look and feel of that site. So now we've clicked on activate for this 2017 site or theme, and you see now that we've got this in a different look and feel to what we had before. So you can change it at any time. There's a lot of themes. So there's over 30,000 themes that are out there. So you'll find something that sort of fits what you need. And the other thing that you'll start to notice with themes and with plugins is that there is something called a freemium model. Some are free, so a lot of them are free, and a lot are paid. And then there's a thing in between where you get a lot of stuff for free, and then you pay for additional bits extra as well. That's called sort of freemium. And so within those themes, you'll find that a lot of them now work with responsive and mobile devices. So with something like the Astra theme that our site is based on, you'll see it'll manage with just the one page and the one set of content. It'll present the page normally like this when it's on a desktop, and it'll present it in a nice way on a mobile device or a narrower device as well. And you'll find that most of the themes, when you're searching for themes, will be responsive as well. So the next bit that WordPress gives you is plugins. And plugins let you add functionality. So functionality, by that I mean things like contact forms, maybe some e-commerce. We use at Awesome Tech Training, we use LearnPress. So the course that we run is available through, we deliver it using something called LearnPress. And you might also want your SEO as well. And so there are plugins as well that help you manage your search engine optimization as well. And there's a lot of plugins as well. So in the same way as there are a lot of themes, there are a lot of plugins. And again, it's super easy to just sort of install them. We can go here to plugins in our dashboard. This is a clean install, so we don't have any plugins. But we add a plugin. And see, these are some featured ones. but you can see popular ones. You'll see contact forms are popular, SEO is popular, things like Elementor. So if you want something that's a bit more drag and drop, or something that's a bit more sort of what you see is what you get, then you can have website builders that give you an element of that as well. And to install them, you literally just click on install and then you click on activate, and that functionality is there then in your website. And again, there are aspects that you need to know when you're installing and understand about doing due diligence on plugins when you install them. And we go through that in the course as well. And so, yes, so you just install by clicking install and activate. If you don't have it, or if you can't find the functionality that you're after, you can just get a developer to put them together as well. So there's a common way of writing these things. And so you can, if you want, just write your own code as well. And so the third part of the customizing your site and the way that it looks is your blocks. And so in the last 2 years, WordPress introduced a new editor called Gutenberg. But the main thing about that is that the way that you put together your pages has changed, so that now it's made up of individual blocks on the page. And that's handy for things like responsiveness. We'll just take a look because those blocks can move around. If we have a look at our contact us page, we can add different blocks. So see here, this plus. You see how the format of the page has changed as well in the editor, and this is because we've changed our theme. But this plus here allows us to add a block. It'll add it to the end, and there's different blocks, so paragraphs. You'll find that there's different ways of presenting the text, and you can see the pop-up there. Or you might have images, you might have galleries. So there's all these different ways of presenting media. So we could have some words here, and if I had some images in my media library, I could pick them out there. But the point is that the page is made up of different blocks, and then ultimately those are put together. If I could type, these are put together and they form the page that you can then see on your site. Obviously they won't, but you see these are 1, 2, 3 blocks here that I've used to make up a very simple page. And things like your contact forms, and maybe a map, a Google map, and different bits are then just dropped into the page. So it's very easy. And the blocks are the way that you achieve that. And the other thing about blocks as well, as with plugins and as with themes, you can always extend it yourself if you can't find the thing that you're after. Which means then you can build pretty much anything with WordPress. There's the 3 aspects of it that you pull together, but once you've got those, you can build something. You don't really need to be terribly technical in order to be able to do it. And we've got the course, and you can sort of bob on and have a look, and we'll show you how to pull those 3 parts of the website together, from installing through to be able to put your site live, and how to use all of those bits. Now, what I'll have a quick look at as well is some of the different aspects within WordPress, and some of the plugins and the way that you add some functionality. And again, we go into these in more detail in some of the webinars that we do, but I'll give you a flavor of the kinds of things that we can do with WordPress. And one of the things that a lot of people have needed to do, especially during lockdown, is get online and have an online store pretty quickly. And there's a lot of ways of achieving that with WordPress. A lot of people use something called WooCommerce, and that's it's a pretty comprehensive way of getting online with a store. But there are others as well. So we've got BigCommerce. BigCommerce is has their own site, but the plugin, the BigCommerce plugin, is the second most popular e-commerce site for WordPress. And it kind of looks after all of the fulfillment and the different ways of running your store. If you're not too worried about the fulfillment side of it, you can use things like easy digital downloads. So if you've got like ebooks or other types of media that you want to sort of sell, and then often something like easy digital downloads is a quick and easy way of doing it. And you can also just bob a PayPal button in as well. So if you've got a PayPal account and you just want to sell something quickly, you can do it. So you can go from the very easy, there's some more complex and some sort of universal e-commerce stuff as well. And if we look at the WooCommerce plugin, this is the most popular plugin for WordPress for getting an e-commerce site up. And this is something that we would see in the admin. In fact, I think I've got this store up here. So this is from the WooCommerce webinar. But what we've got is we've got a simple page. So it's a simple sort of My Food website. And again, this is the site that we get at the end of doing the course. And so I've just taken that and I've bobbed on WooCommerce as well, which means that I've popped on some pizza that we can order, popped on some drinks, and you see how the products are presented in a way that's sort of fairly standard and a way that one of your customers would be able to sort of easily find what they're after. And you know, you can present the products that you've got and it'll sort of manage the basket and the ordering process and the checking out process as well. And so from the customer's point of view, all of this is exactly what they would want to see from an e-commerce site. And for you as the website maintainer or the owner, this is just a case of configuring it within WooCommerce and then setting up the products as a list of products you see. And WooCommerce will sort of like manage your products and it'll manage the process and it'll manage all the emails and things that go to yourself to tell you you've got an order and to the customer to tell them that the order is has been placed or it's being fulfilled. And it'll also manage the sort of e-commerce and taking the payments as well. And all of this plugin is free. So everything that you want to do to get up quickly running with a site, an e-commerce site, you can do with WooCommerce for free, and they make their money on the plugins. So things like bundled products, if you've got a number of products you want to sell as a single one, then there's a plugin that'll be able to let you do that. But you can get up and running very, very quickly with something like WooCommerce. Yeah, and it'll do the stock and it'll also do delivery. It'll work out how much postage is as well based on weight and size. So it does an awful lot. And there's other types of plugins that you can have as well. I mentioned earlier that we use LearnPress for our course, and we can also tie those together within WordPress so that somebody can buy a course through WooCommerce and then it can be tied to LearnPress as well. So we can deliver quite easily with that. We use a plugin which looks after events. So events like this and other events that we have. There's a plugin where we can put in the dates and it'll look after tickets and attendees and make sure that all of the emails go out. And there are plugins as well for things like building up your mailing list. So I'm sure as you start your website and you're building up whatever it is that you're doing, you then want to keep a track and keep that communication going with the people who are interested in what you do. And so something like MailChimp is a great tool for doing that. And there's ways of plugging that into your site as well. So these are different types of functionality that you can just add in by adding plugins. The other thing that you'll be thinking of with your site is being found on Google. And one of the things that WordPress is very good at is search engine optimization. So a lot of the necessary steps that you need to have to be found on Google are already baked into WordPress. So things like the URLs, they're already search engine friendly. They've done performance changes so that they load quicker and they're better for Google in that way. And they will also generate things called sitemaps. They're basically lists of the pages that are on your site, which then tell Google and other search engines what's on your site. And so if you were to do some research and go out and have a look, you'll find that WordPress is very often ranked as the best CMS for running SEO. If you want to learn a little bit more about search engine optimization as well, we've got a webinar where we dig into a lot of the aspects of search engine optimization and how being found on Google. And we touch on things like Yoast as well. So these are things that give you on-page control of your SEO as well. And this is our webinar that's coming up. So again, it's a freemium plugin, and it gets, so what you do is you get a lot of functionality for free. And if you want additional stuff, then you pay a subscription. The stuff that you can do for free is, there's a lot. One of the things you can do is you can modify what the listing looks like in Google. So you can see here on the About Us page, you might not want Google to pick out some random text from the page. Instead, you can alter it and you can give it some compelling text, which might look good on Google when people sort of search for you. And Yoast will also, it'll annotate the page. So it'll add some extra information at the top, which effectively tells the search engines what kind of information you've got, which is great. So if you've got things like recipe sites, then it'll say to Google, this is a recipe. Or if you've got an e-commerce site, it'll say, look, this is an e-commerce site. And so Google then knows how to interpret the page and also how to present it to your users. Yeah. So like I say, we do dig into that a lot more on the SEO webinar. The other thing about WordPress that you get is multi-user options. So you're not sort of by yourself when you're managing the site. You can define other people. So if there's a team of you working on your website, or if you've got somebody who's managing it for you, you can set them up with different roles. And so you can have any number of users, and they can have, by default, any of these roles. So you, as the person maintaining the site, would probably be an administrator, and you've got total control of the site. But editors can go in and they can write content, and they can publish content on the site. They just can't do things like create new users and change the theme and add new plugins. And you can have people who write stuff as well, but it's not necessarily published. Or they can actually, authors can write their own and they can publish their own, but they can't publish anybody else's. And you've got this other one as well, subscribers. And subscribers are people who can sort of register with your site. So for example, say you had some digital copy. So say you had a white paper about something, you might want them to register on your site to be able to download it, or have access to certain pages. Then, so for example, our course that we do, if you buy that, you become a subscriber to our site, and you would have a user on our site. which was a subscriber. You couldn't go in and make changes to the site, but you can access certain areas of it. And so these are the different areas that WordPress will give you, and it gives you a lot of control over the kinds of access that you can have. And again, these might not be specific enough for your needs, but there are plugins that will give you a lot more flexibility over it. And similarly, like users, once you've got users, once you've got anything that's on the internet, you need to consider security as well. And WordPress as well sort of has to handle the kinds of security problems that all things on the internet have. So the versions are regularly updated. The most recent version was about 2-3 weeks ago now. And so that was a small update, which was a quick fix to some problems that had been introduced. And that's just a normal sort of very quick way of getting these updates out, and they install automatically. So anything that's a security fix or a bug fix or anything like that, or a small feature change, will just happen automatically on your site. And plugins as well will update. So plugins come from third parties, and they will be releasing new versions, and they'll be doing bug fixes and security fixes as well. And WordPress will update and can automatically update those if you want it to. There's a lot of control over what gets automatically updated and what doesn't. It's a bit like the control you have on your phone, say for updating apps. And then finally, there's a lot of help and support out there. So I mentioned there was 27 million. I keep saying 27 million, and here I've just noticed I say 24 million. That's because there's 3 million more sites now. There are a lot of people out there who know about WordPress, can maintain and develop and help you with running your website. It means that there's a lot of developers and designers who understand how WordPress is put together. And there's lots of areas and user groups and places where people meet who will discuss and help with WordPress as well. And there are many resources out there. And so Google is your friend, very much so. And there's a lot of things that you can do by yourself to sort of find out about WordPress. One of the things that we like to sort of do is to make sure that people have got the basics. So once you've got an understanding of the basics of WordPress, then you can ask some intelligent questions about what it is that you want to do, which is why the kinds of things that we do in the course are really useful, because it gets you to that sort of like base level of understanding. But once you've got that understanding, there are many, many places where you can get some help of the site. So that's really everything that we were looking at covering. So what is it, really, to summarize, that's compelling why you should choose WordPress over, say, writing your own site or using a different CMS as well? Well, you get a lot for free. You get an awful lot for free. You get many of the plugins, many of the themes, but the core WordPress itself, all are free, and you can get a long way with the stuff that's there. You own your content, and so you're not locked in to these sort of these sites where it's really difficult to pull your site out, and it's really difficult to or you can't guarantee what will happen to those people who are hosting your site. And it's super customizable as well. And so every aspect of the site can still be customized in a way that is, again, very difficult in some of these other ways, the other providers which give you ways of managing your site. One of the things that I think is most important is when you sort of set out with something like this, you're not on your own. There's a lot of good stuff out there, and there's lots of ways that we can help you as well. So there's a lot of things supporting you as you start on a journey down using WordPress. So to help you with that, on the site, we've got some free resources and things that you can go to now and just sort of start mooching around and sort of see what we've got. We've got a video, which is a straight build a site in an hour, which takes a single page style site with all of the different aspects that you may want on it, but in different sections on the same page, and how to present that in a decent design, a well-presented way, but it gets you up running really quickly. We've got a guide, a business guide on search engine optimization that you can download. So if you go to the site, these links, by the way, so you'll see that these are links. We're going to send you a PDF of the slides. And so these links will work. So all of these things that I'll talk about, you can just sort of click through and get. And we've got this ebook, which has got the advice about search engine optimization and what you can do now with any site that you've got running now, or what you could do with a WordPress site as well. And we've got a good comprehensive video library with lots of tips on how to use WordPress and how you can sort of like tweak it to be able to do what you want. We've also got some training. So if you want to sort of go through that process and learn from start to getting your site out live, or if you've got a site that's live already and you want to understand it a bit better, but you want to do it at your own pace, we've got the video course that we do. And in that, we go through all of the aspects, some of the aspects that we've talked about today and a lot of other ones as well, about how you can actually build out your site using WordPress. And so we found when we were doing it sort of in a room with a lot of people, we found that we had a good mix of people who were starting out, and we had people who had an existing site who wanted to understand it a bit more. And so you'll find that that can be useful. That normally costs £100 to get access to it. But because you're here today, it's £50. And that's available until the end of the month, so the 30th of November. And so if you bob onto the site and if you get on there before the 30th and use this code here, and we'll send this through to you as well, then you can get it for £50. Now, it's not just the course that we have in there. We'll give you a year's worth of hosting as well. And so we'll set you up with a site. We'll make sure that you've got all of the tools that you need to be able to learn it. So even if you don't have anything, we'll make sure that you're able to go through the course, try out the site, and even build out a site and see, build something that you want to go live. And if you get there, then we'll give you a hand and make sure that you can get it live as well with your own domain as your own site. And with all of the stuff that we have, well, especially with this, if it doesn't work, then we've got a money back guarantee. But we've had lots of feedback and lots of people really like it because it sort of suits what they need to do. And you can find more of these on our site. So I think that's it for this morning, Rachel. Have we had any questions or anything through?
Got a few. I would like to invite people to ping any others over on the Q&A though, while we cover the first few, if that's all right. First question. So you're talking here of which are you talking about here? WordPress.org or WordPress.com?
That's a good
and
question.
What's the difference?
Right. We're talking about WordPress.org. WordPress.com is similar. So WordPress.com was spun out by some of the guys who started WordPress as a commercial venture, which uses sort of like a cut down, it's kind of limited version of WordPress.org, but it's hosted. They host it for you, and they sort of like sell a bunch of stuff on top of it as well. It's a perfectly good system, but what we're talking about here is WordPress.org, where you get a lot more flexibility. So with WordPress.com, a lot of the aspects of a hosted subscription-based type system, you kind of get a similar thing with WordPress.com, but with WordPress.org, you've got that code and you've got the hosting sorted for yourself. And so that's principally what we've been talking about this morning.
Okay, thank you. Does a website use more than one theme, or do you just use one theme for the whole site?
The theme applies for the whole of the site. So that look and feel, the theme is either a set of templates, like a full set of templates for the whole of the site, or is sort of like a base sort of white label template that you can build the site up on, but you only ever have one theme per site.
Okay, back to the WordPress.com, WordPress.org. Can you start off with WordPress.com and then migrate it later to WordPress.org?
Yeah, there's an export. So to be fair, so what's very difficult with things like Wix and Squarespace is pulling your site away from them and putting it into something like WordPress. With WordPress.com, there is an export for your site, and you can import it into your own site. There are differences. So where you may use some of the plugins and themes that are available on WordPress.com, they aren't precisely the same with WordPress.org. So there is a manual aspect, sort of like getting them across, but you can sort of like copy it over.
Okay, well, I think you might have started to answer one of my other questions. Somebody with a Wix site, how do you move a Wix site over?
Well, Lorna, remind me on this one with the Wix. Is the Wix one the one with the export, or is it Squarespace?
I'm just about to send a link for the person who asked this question, which gives a tutorial on how to do this.
Excellent.
Excellent. Thank you.
There's one of them. So Squarespace, one of Squarespace and one of Wix has a way of exporting, and Lorna will have sent the link, but it's with both of them, it's kind of a tricky, it's just a faff.
Okay, I've got a question about, similar question about Weebly as well.
The same
Lorna,
answer.
have you used Weebly?
No, but it's the same answer. I'm just about to dig out a link for that as well. So there's always a way of doing these things. Sometimes it's a bit more of a faff and sometimes a bit less. So there's usually some element of manual copying and pasting, and some element that will come across quite neatly. So quite often you'll find, like if you've got blog posts, for example, they'll be imported perfectly fine, but maybe pages won't be, or the images won't quite come across. So it's usually not kind of just plug it in and let it go kind of a solution, but it gets you a reasonable chunk of the way that you need to go.
Okay, that question's on the chat if you need to find the person who asked it, Lorna.
I'm just about to ping a link.
Thank you.
For Wix and for Weebly.
Yeah, brilliant. Plugins. You mentioned various different plugins.
Mm-hmm.
Do you pay for each plugin?
No. So the ones that are listed in the way that I showed you are free. So anything that you can find under here. So one of the conditions of being listed in the WordPress plugin directory, and the same with the theme directory, is that it's available for free. which is why you get these freemium plugins as well, where it's free to get a lot of the content, and then you pay a subscription for a bit extra. There are paid plugins, so they won't be listed here, but you Google them and they're paid. And ditto, there are paid themes. They're not listed here, but you can sort of Google them. But everything that's listed within the plugin directory is free.
Okay, thank you. If you change themes once you've started to build your site, do you lose the content that you've already developed?
No. So some themes will, some very specialized themes might use specific blocks of content. Badly written themes will have them so that you might lose them, but with the most themes it won't be lost. So I'll just show you a quick example in the way that we did just earlier. So we had that's the WooCommerce one. So in our themes, we're running this 2017, which has our Hello World content. And if I changed to, say, the 2019 theme, and then looked at the site, it's got all of the same content and all of the same navigation, but it's presented in a different way. And so you have the same content, just in a different theme. If you have gone down the line of maybe having a couple of years worth of content, and you've got like a store, and you might have some unusual plugins and different bits, then you really do want to test it first, or maybe put a maintenance plugin on, something that says site under maintenance, and then give it a run through and just make sure that everything works first and everything is there, because you just don't know how maybe one of those plugins is working. But 9 times out of 10, you can just sort of keep the content, definitely.
Okay, thank you. I think this might be my last one at the moment, unless any more pop through, obviously. Are there security concerns with WordPress?
Yeah, so exactly the same as, yeah, it's the internet. Everything that's on the internet has a security concern. So, and the key thing is how those are mitigated. And so, like I was saying earlier, a lot of the stuff around the security concerns is generally as things are found out. So it might be either sloppy code in a plugin, or something that sort of slips into the core WordPress. And the way that that's mitigated generally is that the core WordPress is frequently and automatically updated as these things are found. If you go through a reputable hosting company and they have a one-click install, then the security around the hosting should be all right. And do a bit of due diligence. So this is something, again, that we sort of talk about in the course. Just understand what it is that you're adding to the site when you're doing it, to make sure that it's a regularly updated and well-used plugin. Because if you're installing something that was written, say, 10 years ago, and it's only running on 5 sites and was last updated sort of like 8 years ago, then it's much more risky. But there are steps that you can do to make sure that your site is secure.
Okay, I don't think I've got any more come through, so I think we'll call it a day. So thank you very much to everybody who attended. Like I said, we'll get an email out to you later today that has a link to both the recording and to the slides with all the various different links and codes and so on in it. That will be this afternoon probably. Thank you very much, Steve, and to Lorna for fielding questions, but for your presentation today. And we hope we see you all another time. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.